Hi, and welcome to Wait, Hold Up, What? As always, I am your host, Dawn Hanks. In today's episode, we have an interesting one. Interesting for a couple of reasons. The first being that our guest, Stacy Sombert, who is a product manager with over 20 years experience in consumer product goods, from sports to appliances to everyday fashion, men's, women's, children's. She's also the guru really behind the growth of the Oakley women's product line a number of years back and really facilitating the product that came out of that initiative, which is where I met her. The other reason that it's interesting is because I've known Stacy for a really long time and consider her to be one of my closest friends. And sometimes that makes recording an episode actually more difficult because we talk about these kind of subjects all the time, but not typically with eavesdropping ears, if you will. The other distinction is that both Stacy and I are in our mid to upper 40s, single, unmarried, never been married, and do not have children. And so this episode is precipitated by a term that we heard on social media that was referred to as SINKS, which is single, income, no kids. I think that's how you say it. And we kind of wanted to talk about it. Neither one of us heard of it because, we're in our 40s and we're not up on all the trends and all the different acronyms of way people talk about us, but also because the subject of the single woman and the conversations that surround that on whether it is proper, not proper, I am woman, hear me roar, or a joke to the system, and all the different ways in which we kind of categorize this more modern day concept of the single woman who's kind of just doing her thing. Obviously, this harkens back to our episode on Taylor Swift and the comments from Newsweek. But here is some interesting data for you. 47% of U.S. adults younger than 50 that do not currently have children said they were unlikely ever to have them. And when asked why, 57% of them said they simply just didn't want to have kids. This is from the New York Times, by the way. And when it was asked why kids were not in the future, a lot of people just simply said, look, I don't want to have them. But some people said that they wanted to focus on other things like their careers or personal passions. They were concerned about the state of the world, worried about costs involved in raising of a child, which clearly is not a new concern, concerns about the environment, including climate change, and not having found the right partner. In another recent study, only 26% of U.S. adults said that having children was extremely or very important to live a fulfilling life. And so we really wanted to talk about that. And I think because of our familiarity, maybe we didn't dig in as deep as we could have. And we both have varying reasons why we are single and why we don't have kids. But I think it's important to understand that in this episode and in anything that we do as Eliminate Girl Hate or Wait, Hold Up, What, the podcast, that we are not telling anyone how to live their lives other than by saying, live the life that you want. If you are being respectful and you are not harming other people, we believe in you having the choice to live the life that is the most fulfilling for you. And we stand by that. And for some people, that means being single and having no children. For some people, that means being partnered up, but having children. For some, that means having children with no partner. And for some, that means more traditional relationships in which they are married and they have children. Whichever format or whichever life you choose, that is up to you and your decision. We do not judge. What we were trying to do in this episode, however, is maybe not defend our choices so much as saying, what's so wrong with our choices? And have a little fun with the reasons why being single with a solo income and no kids or no partner might actually be a little bit enjoyable. And so that's what we chose. And I want to say from my perspective that my choice to be single and have no kids, while yes, technically is a choice, it wasn't what I planned, right? This isn't the life that I envisioned for myself. And in some ways, that's amazing and beautiful because it's this big, gorgeous thing that I could have never even dreamed of. And in some ways, that means I didn't get some of the things that I did dream of. But my choice to put me first and to do the things that keep me at peace, mentally healthy, mentally strong. Those choices are my personal choices to make. And they are the ones sometimes that are purposely meant and made, and sometimes that the universe has made for me. And the goal of my life and even our podcast is to allow us space to embrace where we are, to fight for where we want to be, and to hold grace for ourselves and for others in the podcast. In the process. My goodness. The other thing that I want to say is I saw an Instagram post recently that said the economic rise of women has made marriage a choice for women rather than a necessity. And this is something to think about because when we think about it historically, we have not had the choice of whether or not we wanted to partner, we wanted to have children. Those choices were bestowed upon us or forced upon us. And I think that's an important thing to remember and to think about as we look at the choices that people make and we honor them for them. They may not be the right choices for us. They may not even be a choice that we understand. But as with all dialogue in the world, the point of it is to learn from other people and find a place of understanding. And we hope that that's what this episode does for you and the podcast in general does for you. So after a few messages from our sponsors, we'll get right to the episode with Stacey Sombert. We hope you enjoy it. We are sponsored by, can a bra help change the trajectory of a girl's life? Did you know that nationally only 20% of girls engage in at least 60 minutes of daily physical activity, a lower rate than boys? Or that girls' participation in sports drops off significantly from the ages of 10 to 17? Wait, hold up, what? Yeah. Some of the barriers that contribute to this include lack of financial means, lack of role models, dropping body confidence, and concerns about body changes, including breast development and the need for a sports bra. The simple intervention of a sports bra, along with the normalization of body development, can change the trajectory of a girl's relationship with body movement for her whole life. You heard that right. Her whole life. Every girl deserves to feel comfortable and confident in her own body. And that's why Bras for Girls partners with more than 25 athletic brands and donors just like you to distribute new, high-quality sports bras and breast development booklets to girls in need, ranging from the age of 8 to 18. Let's get girls in well-fitting sports bras right when they need them the most. Girls plus sports equals a beautiful world. You can donate to Bras for Girls today at brasforgirls.org. And as a side note, Eliminate Girl Hate has partnered with brasforgirls.org and will be donating a proceed of all merchandise sales to helping girls get in the bras that they need and keep them in sports. You can help by shopping the Eliminate Girl Hate store today. Did you know that 80% of the world's purchases are influenced and made by women? Or that 90% of product development, manufacturing, and corporate leadership is led by men? I don't know about you, but that seems like some funky, disconnected math. This disconnect means large segments of the population are not getting their needs met because the products being made never even asked us what problems we needed to solve. Instead, companies use a pink it and shrink it philosophy. Not familiar? I bet you are. You know it. Take a man's product, make it smaller, paint it pink, sell it for 25% more. Then, when the products fail to make a dent in the market or to sell rapidly, they say things like, the market wasn't ready. Or, we were so sure it was going to work, I wonder what happened. And then they move on. I'm here to tell you, the market is most definitely ready. But the market is savvy. And putting some paint and saying it was designed for us is a slap in the face. We have real needs, and we're not settling for anything less than real solutions. If this sounds familiar to you and your business, then it's time to connect with Eliminate Girl Hate. We help businesses understand the lucrative consumer segment of women and how to meet their needs in authentic ways. From problem solving, product creation, marketing, and even human resource practices, we help create safe and equitable spaces for the female segment. And these safe spaces increase profit margins, employee retention, and brand loyalty along the way. It's time to start a revolution and meet your consumers where they are. It's time to eliminate girl hate. Check us out, eliminategirlhate.com, and find out how we can help your business today. We are sponsored by Epiphany Recording Studio. Creativity needs to flow freely if you want to reach that aha moment that we're all looking for. At Epiphany Recording Studio, their goal is to create space that takes full advantage of those moments. From podcast and video production to music creation, you get the support you need to create compelling stories with a competitive sound. Your ideas can flow freely because they partner with you free of judgment, ready to be vulnerable, do the work, and make your projects look and sound their best. So let Epiphany Recording Studio help you reach your artistic vision by visiting them today at epiphanyrecordingstudio.com. Tell them Dawn sent you. Have you ever dreamed of writing a book? I know I have. Or maybe, also like me, you've started a manuscript. Maybe you've started 10 and you've just never finished it, or never let anybody else read it, or never thought you could publish it. Wherever you are in the process, Jim Woods would like to help. Jim's a writer just like you, but he's also a coach who loves helping writers bring their books into the world and make them a reality. If you are like me, sometimes you need that push, a supportive but demanding cohort along the way to put your stories out into the world and keep you on track. Jim Woods is that cohort. Visit jimwoodswrites.com and click the Let's Chat button. Mention our podcast for a free clarity call and get your story out into the world because we need it. And now, wait, hold up. What? A podcast from the women at Eliminate Girl Hate. My guest is the fabulous Stacey Sonbert, and I say that as if you all know her, but you'll want to after the end of this, I'm pretty darn sure. Stacey and I have known each other 12, 15 years, somewhere in there. I feel like our origin story is kind of a meet cute because I had left Oakley after my first tenure there and moved back to Portland, Oregon. And Stacey had started there, and we had similar work friends, or if you want to call it that. And I had met her on a trip or something like that. And lots of people had told her she should meet me. Lots of people told me I should meet her. And we did. And I'm going to romanticize it, but I feel like everybody else faded into oblivion, and you and I just zeroed in, and the birds sang and the clouds parted and rainbows came out, and we have been friends ever since.
That's totally my memory of it as well.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. We are seemingly the most opposite people in the world, and yet it works for us. And I feel like we have this mutual love and respect for each other in everything that we do. And so when I started the podcast, I knew I wanted you to be a guest, but I knew that in order to do so, it had to be the right kind of topic. And full disclosure, we have talked for years about writing a blog or doing a podcast, except
a vlog. We were going to do a vlog.
Stacey wanted me to do all the work. And she just wanted to kind of show up. And I was like, that's not happening. And then look, it's happening. And so we're doing it.
I manifested it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the next question is going to be, what was that vlog going to be about? And it was going to be all about two single ladies living their life and our experiences, because we had these kind of yin and yang idea of dating and going out into the world. And it was pretty comical for anybody who would listen in. And so we just thought people would laugh. But sometimes when you think that, it's only you that's laughing and no one else is. And so it never came to fruition. But we are here today because I learned a new term. And when I texted it to you, you were like, what the hell is this? What is this? And that term is the word SINKS. It is single income, no kids. And I guess it's plural. And like everything in the world, we've got to put an acronym on it.
We'd heard of DINKS, double income, dual income, no kids.
Oh, see, I hadn't heard that one. So
okay. I had seen that a bunch online and social media and stuff, but never SINKS.
Yes. And it kind of has been coming into the cultural conversation because of people like Taylor Swift. And this idea that more and more women are becoming that single income, no kid category. And it is just enraging a lot of people. And so I don't want us to rail against the patriarchy in this, but more so I wanted to talk about what being a single income, no kid woman in your 40s is like. And
It's amazing.
yeah, if you need the cliff notes, it can be pretty amazing,
It's
right?
awesome.
And
Greatest.
so I'm going to start at the beginning because I just feel like that's a good way. I haven't even said like who you are and what you do, but I'm sure that'll be in the intro. So we'll do that and get to it. But did you ever want kids in your life?
I never did when I was young. And then I think there were probably a couple of years, maybe in my early 20s, where I just thought that I would because that's what you do. And I think I remember being at the beach and there was a kid nearby, like a cute kid. And I said something about the kid being cute. And like my best friend, Kristen, who you know very well, was like, I have never heard you say anything positive about a child at that point, 15 plus years that we've known each other. And I think that was probably the only very, very small point in my life. I don't want to say that I wanted them. I just thought that that's what you did. But I thought that for a very, very short amount of time.
It's interesting because I always thought I would have kids, but it wasn't until now that I realized that it might have been that I just thought that was what you were supposed to do. And I still don't know for sure because I love kids. Like we are a little bit different in that regard, right? Like
I don't love kids.
Yeah, kids and
I
kids
love
me.
certain kids
Of
that I
course.
have to love.
You have to love.
But I have to love them because they're part of my life. But
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not like you are an animal person, right? Cats, dogs, horses, whatever. Like you love animals. You would not horses. Sorry. No disrespect to horses.
You freak me out. Right?
They're
beautiful. I just don't want to ride one.
Sure. But like kids in me, it's like a moth to a flame. It's like you see it and you're like, whoa. And so there's a little bit of nuance there, right? So if you never really wanted kids, did you want to be married?
No.
Ever?
Again, probably a very short, I'd say probably the same amount of time and during the same time that I thought that I should have kids is what I thought I should get married. Or I just imagined like that's what it would happen.
Yeah.
But again, very, very short.
And it was never like this, you know, how people say, I just always knew.
Oh, no. And I mean, I hear women talk about how they imagined their wedding when they were 5 years old. I mean, like, you know, I think about Friends. I know it's your favorite show. I have some issues with it, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. But like when they're all wearing their wedding dresses and I'm just like, I do not relate to that. I never related to it. I never imagined this big wedding and wedding dresses and bridesmaids and flower girls and all that shit. I'm sorry, am I allowed to curse?
You're allowed to do whatever you want.
None of that ever was anything that meant anything to me or was important to me or even that I thought about.
Was it important to your family?
I don't think so. I mean, they never made it important. I mean, I know the story that I know about my parents, I think they got engaged because they were like, we should get married. And they were like, okay. And so they got married. And then I think my mom's dad or maybe my dad's parents threw them like a reception. And my mom wore black hot pants and black thigh-high boots or knee-high boots and with like a long black crocheted open jacket. So like, there was no giant photo of their wedding day in my living room. Like we're just not those people.
Yeah.
And you know, for the audience, my mother died when I was 24. But before that, she was always like, do your thing, have fun. You know, my dad jokingly said like, your mom's telling you to sleep around before you settle down, you know, but really it was never like, you need to get married and you need to have babies. It was just, we weren't that family ever.
They just wanted
you to be happy. I was 24 when she died. And maybe if she was still alive when I got a little bit older, she might have said, hey, I want grandbabies. But like my brother's got the baby. So he's got that covered.
Yeah.
And so it was never like, oh, your boyfriend, you know, is he someone you could marry or think about these things for a partner in life? We never had those conversations. It's not how my family rolls.
And as you look now at your life, ignoring for the moment all the awesome things that we're going to talk about, have you ever had a moment where you're like, either I wish I had kids or I wish I had a partner not so much from like this yearning to want kids, but just this idea of maybe companionship or something, because that's what a lot of people will throw out there.
The kids thing, absolutely not. Not even for half a second. So my brother had kids. My brother's oldest is almost 11. And so I remember when he was born, when Max was born, and I was still working at Oakley. I was living in California, and a bunch of my friends were like, "Oh, once you meet Max, and once you meet your niece and nephew, and nephews, and that you're gonna change your mind." And I have to say, it only solidified my decision and my feelings. I love my niece and my two nephews. I mean, they're like, they're hanging up behind me, and I adore them. And I jokingly said I love them because I have to love them, but I love them.
Of course.
But like, I don't want to hang out with them all the time. And like, I don't want to play their stupid games. And I don't want to, I don't know how many Minecraft and Demogorgon and whatever the heck other stuff I have to talk about. Like, I go out there and I spend time and we have fun, and we play and we do fun things. But like, I leave after a few hours. So he's like, "Are you going to sleep over?" And I'm like, "No." And then, my sister-in-law's father's like, "Why are you sleeping over?" And I'm like, "Because my house doesn't have kids. And so I want to go home where there's no kids and wake up where there's no kids." So the kid thing, not even for a second. I listened to I listened to one of the podcasts yesterday. I don't remember her name, but she worked for the agency.
Natalie?
Her name,
It's okay.
you know her from story. I don't remember. Anyway.
Oh, Janelle.
I think you had said, Janelle, did you say Janelle?
Yeah.
Yeah, Janelle. I think you had said, I didn't realize that you have to like teach a kid how to use a spoon. And like, that just like, I don't want to say punch me in the gut, but I was like, fuck that. Like, I don't want to teach a kid how to use a spoon. I don't want to teach anyone how to do anything. I'm not a fan of incompetence. I am not a fan of like helplessness. And I understand I was that, and my parents thankfully wanted to do that. And so I don't know if my dad did, but they did it. I to like have to be responsible for someone and their learning and their education and their emotional growth and like diapers and all of that. Like I want nothing to do with any of that. The companionship part, I think, is probably a little bit more, maybe a little bit more nuanced. My initial would say no. I like my company more than I like anyone else's company. I don't want someone in my house. I don't want someone that I have to check in with. Like every single thing I do that's not work related is because I'm making the decision to do it or not do it. And I never have to say like, let me, I'll call my brother and be like, "Hey, what's going on this week?" And be like, "Oh, let me check with G." Like, yeah, well, that's what you do. You check with your wife to see what's going on this weekend and make sure they're in place. Like, I never have to say I got to check with someone unless it's like, I got to check my work calendar, right?
Of course.
I live my life however I want it. I don't want someone that close.
Disturbing that.
Yeah. My peace is more important to me than anything.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, yeah. Do I want to go out on a couple of days? Sure. Do I want to hook up? Sure. But like, do I want like a long-term companion? Nope.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to a lot of people.
It is, there's so much in there to unpack, right? Because the first element, which is the kid element, it's so funny how common what people tell you when you're in this situation is, right? So same thing for me was everybody was like, "Oh, once your siblings start having babies or once you reach a certain age that yearning is going to happen, right? Your biological clock." And for me, it was slightly different. So the oldest nephew or niece or nephew that I have is 9. His name is Otis. And when there were 2 things that happened. One was I got to go to a doctor's appointment and hear his heartbeat. And it sent me, I got in the car and I was crying, and my sister-in-law was like, "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is about you. This is not about me. I'm so sorry." But I was like, did I miss out on something? Like, was I supposed to do this? Like, I was 39 at the time. And so it was almost as if like, what we don't talk about a lot about is that women only have a limited amount of time in which it's even possible. Whereas men can be like, "Oh, I still have time. I still have time." And so even if you don't have this desire for children or don't think you do, this cultural conversation around it makes you think you're going to regret it once the time is up. And so I had that moment, right? Where I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. And I literally went to doctor's offices. I was like, let's check. Is it even possible? Because I also weirdly had always thought I would not be able to have children. And I can't explain it. There's no reason. I just really in my head thought I would never be able to carry children. And, the doctors were like, well, we don't really do tests like that, like they show you in the movies and television. But if you really want to get pregnant, you should just keep trying. And I was like, keep trying? Like, what do you mean? And they were like, no joke to the listener. The first thing they said is go out and just find somebody at a bar and have sex with them. And do it without protect. Like, I was like, wait, this is so contrary to what my whole life has been told, but okay. And then they said, and if that doesn't work, ask somebody to give you sperm, buy a turkey baster from the dollar store, squirt it up inside of you and make a baby. And it went from there. And I was just so mortified at the conversation. And then a couple months later, Otis was born. And I go into that hospital and I hold him, and my life just went into this tunnel of love. Like I have never felt what I felt in that moment in my life. And I was like, oh, okay, I get what people say. Like it's different when it's yours. There's all those idioms, right? Oh,
Yep.
you're not patient. It's different when it's yours. No, it's not. I'm not a parent, and I get why people say that, but I'm also on the outside looking at parents who look like they are so frazzled and so overwhelmed, and for good reason.
For sure.
And I don't know if that's what I wanted. And so while I felt all of that love, and I continued with the other nephews and so forth, it didn't shrink my ovaries like traveling on an airplane does and hearing children scream, but it certainly was like, okay, it's now or never. And I had a conversation and said, what's more important to me, a child or companionship? And for me, it was companionship because I have a hard enough time taking care of myself. Let's be honest. You of anybody knows that.
No, stop. That's bullshit because you can take care of yourself. You think about like, okay, how do I do laundry for more than one person? How do I cook meals for more than one person? How do I get people to soccer? Like, what about me? When do I get to like hang out and chill?
How do I pay for it? Like,
well, I would think if you're doing it, you're dual income.
Yes.
And so things are easier. But yeah, I'm like, all my money goes to me.
Yeah.
Like, the stuff I want and the stuff I want to do and places I want to go, food I want to eat.
And then the companionship part that you're talking about, I think that's also interesting because I don't want to say this globally because I think there are different nuances to it globally. So I don't want to speak out of turn. But in the US, the way in which we look at partnership and companionship is full of so much grossness. Technical word there, guys. I'm a scholar. But there's so much of it that is packed into these historical contexts which prevented women from living their life in the way that they wanted to or chose to, right? Marriage initially was a contract and it was based on financial security and all of those things until as recently as the 70s, we weren't allowed to own property. We weren't allowed to have credit cards, all these things that we hear all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so marriage as a construct is so wrapped up in all of that. And I struggle with doing that. And I would assume a lot of people do. And we now have this modern world in which we have been given viewership or even participation in what a world would be like if we did do what we wanted and if we did chase after these things. And that is a sexy world. Now, I'm not saying children and husband is not also have its own lovely things. And I am not denigrating people for making that choice. But now we have visibility to be able to make that choice so that it is the right one for us.
Yeah.
And
I feel
that
very lucky that I'm able to make this choice.
exactly, that there's a freedom in that, right?
Yeah, and I think, you're not denigrating other people. Like most of my friends are, a lot of my friends are married with kids and they have beautiful lives and beautiful families and they're very happy. And I'm happy for them and I love to watch it, but I'm also like, cool for you.
Yeah.
This is not for me. Like I
Yeah.
don't want it. And yeah, it's just not, it doesn't appeal to me. And I think part of that is that I'm fortunate enough to live in New York City
Yeah.
where I am out doing something awesome multiple times a week,
Yeah.
whether it's a new restaurant or it's a Broadway show or it's a
Yeah.
museum or it's just hanging out, walking the streets or going to the beach or taking the ferry or going to Brooklyn. And I think that has made it a much like I would, when we lived in suburbia, when I lived in suburbia in Orange County, I was like, kill me. Like,
Yeah.
but now I'm my, the things I get to do and the places I get to go are awesome.
Yeah. And
They're way
I
more
think that
fulfilling than what I think a companion would be.
well, and that addresses a really crazy narrative, right? So somebody commented this, I want to say it was on social media. I don't want to credit it incorrectly, but someone was commenting about how single women in their 40s are miserable. They also added the cat component, right? I think it was
It was
JD
Jamie
Vance.
Vance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said,
Uh,
the is
and
run by miserable cat ladies, unmarried miserable cat
yeah,
ladies or
and
something.
so I did post about it, but rather than get into a political argument, I said not all of us have cats. Some of us are allergic, right?
Yeah.
Um, because I was trying to be funny. But there's also this thing around being single that you have to be miserable. Like that every person who is single, especially past a certain age, that it just must be so lonely and so miserable and so all of those things. And so I want to address that.
No, wait, I just want to say that my favorite part about the miserable cat lady is like there's a counter argument to that I see all the time. And it's like, what does that say about the quality of men
Yeah.
that women would rather hang out with a cat than hang out with you? Like,
Well, and
turn that question around of why are you miserable on a cat lady? And like, what are we doing wrong that you guys would rather be with a cat? Because I would rather be with my cat.
and also it's this idea that we can only have enjoyment in the company of other people, right? And I loved what you said, and I may mess up how you said it, but you said, I love my own company more than anybody else's. That is such a gift. And the gift to be alone and be at peace alone is such a rare gift that so many people don't have because of a number of different things that tells them that that's a negativity, right? And I have not found that. I spend a lot of time alone. But I also think it's how you approach being alone because you can be lonely in a room full of people. I have been there, right? I was there recently. But are you doing things? Here's how I'll say it. A lot of people in their 40s, when they hit 40, they use terminology like, I'm 40 now. I don't give a shit. I'm doing what I want. I don't care what people say anymore, right? You hear this a lot. It's on every over 40s comedy routine. If you're a comic, they all use it. And I am guilty. 40 did that to me. I was like, fuck this, fuck that. I don't care anymore. But it also gave me this intense freedom to be like, well, why am I waiting? And
To
so
do anything.
to do anything. And it's like, I don't need somebody to go travel with me. I don't need somebody to go to a movie with me. Why? We're not talking during the movie. Like, you're not holding my hand. Like, why do I need you there? At concerts, all these things, right? And so I really started to explore life on my own. I did that before 40 because of how much travel I did for work.
Sure.
And it made it so I was comfortable alone and I wasn't afraid to be alone places. And I think that is something that we need to offer men and women is this ability to get comfortable on our own because you can't possibly find what truly brings you joy if it always has to be in the company of someone else.
Sure.
And so whenever people ask me, I don't want to use advice, but when people are like, what would you suggest? It is always live alone for at least a year before you get married, find a partner, do whatever. And it is travel alone. wherever and however you can, whatever your budget allows for. If it is an hour away to the beach, if it is camping, whatever, do it safely, but do it because you find parts of yourself that you cannot find other places, right? I mean, you've traveled a ton.
Totally. I mean, I think part of that is like the independent woman can do that. And then the independent woman comes out and is like, wait, what do I need you for? You know, I've been single for a very long time. I had 2 boyfriends in my earlier life. They both said, like, you don't need me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but I want to be with you. Not and they both preferred that I needed them over wanting that.
Yeah.
And so, hey, maybe I wasn't with the right people. Of course, you know, that's definitely always a question, but I don't need anyone for anything.
Well, and there's such an interesting context to that too, right? Because historically, we have needed man financially to keep us stable, right?
Mhm.
And then there's a narrative that we're gold diggers.
Sure.
And so it's like, well, hold on. You created that context for us. You did not allow us to make
We
money.
created everything.
Right. And that narrative carries on today, right? So if women are looking for security in a man, whether that be financial or physical security or whatever it is, there are some people who are turned off by that and say, "Oh, you're using me for X, Y, and Z." But the way I look at it is if you come into a relationship, whatever that is, friend, partner, whatever context it is a give and take of offerings, right? And
Mhm.
so you are giving me something that I need. I'm giving you something that you need in return. And we come to an agreement of what those things are that is going to make our relationship work. You
Yeah.
have a say in it. I have a say in it. That is the same in romantic relationships, right?
Yeah.
So if I, as a woman, say, I need financial security from a man, that is your choice to do so. And if
Totally.
he says, I agree to that, but in return, I want this, and you have agreed, great, go off into the world. But for a lot of people, I think where that change is coming is they can have a full life on their own. So when they come together with somebody, it isn't about need and it isn't about survival anymore. It is truly about companionship.
Yeah.
So like I would love a partner. I think that would be phenomenal. I want to go to concerts. I want to go travel. I want to eat a lot of really good food. I want to roll down hills and swing on a swing set. Like,
Well, I do that with my friends.
agreed.
Like I'm very fortunate. I have very, very, very dear friends from different times of my life all over the country, mostly East Coast, West Coast. And so and they're all different, right? You said we couldn't be more opposite. I mean, think about me and Heather. We couldn't be more opposite. Like me and Erica, I have friends who like, I'm so opposite of,
Yeah.
but we like hanging out. We don't all like doing the same things always, but there's certain friends you do some things with and certain friends you do other things with. And you say goodbye at the end of the night and then you go home to your nice, peaceful home.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And so again, if you don't have a lot of friends and you don't live in a place that's very exciting, it can be very hard. But
Yeah.
I think that I'm fortunate that where I live and I have the friends that I have. And I was raised to be very independent that yeah.
I also think that when you find peace with who you are and your own company, it is a lot easier to make friends.
Sure. My experience isn't like that because I did not turn to 40 and say, fuck it.
Yeah.
I've always been a fuck it girl. Like,
Yeah.
you don't like me, I don't care. You think this, I don't care. Like, that's on you. That's not on me. I know that a lot of people struggle with me, but I don't care.
But that's also why your friendships, they happen at different points of life. They are scattered. They are varying degrees because you come into their orbit fully understanding who you are and what you need and not pretending to be something else.
Yep.
And we do live in this culture where we're supposed to put our best foot forward, right? You're supposed to, like, nobody shows their real self on a first date. Gasp, right? You're not allowed to do that. It's a job interview. You've got to wow them and then show them the crazy a little bit later. And for the viewers that didn't see that, she made a little like gagging face or expression. And it is so true is that we have built this culture around tricking people or fooling people into liking who we are. And then we get surprised when we show them the real us and they're like, hold on, wait a minute. And so if you have always been a person who has been comfortable with yourself, who knows yourself and is like, fuck it, I'm going to do me, it means that no one has met a fake version of you.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure I what is it, code switch a little bit
Of course.
depending on where I am.
Of course.
But I'd say most people who've met me and know me.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, right? Hi, Cat. A cat has come into the picture. A miserable cat lady is just sitting here chatting. But I think there is something to that. And a lot of the reasons why friendships end or go their course is because of that changing of who we are and that additional knowledge of who we are, right? And it's like, okay, I know myself better now. I'm setting boundaries, and then those don't work for the people. And so it is true. There's a season and a reason, that whole expression of people being in there. Do you think that being single and having no children has ever been a deterrent in your career from the eyes of others?
Not even a little bit.
I love that. I'm thinking about that Jennifer Aniston movie.
I feel like that hurts people. I think it hurts women more when they have families and kids. I feel like I'm able to like come and go and do, my company in the US is based on the West Coast and globally based in New Zealand. And I have a work call at 9:00 tonight.
Yeah.
And if I had kids, I would not be on that work call at 9:00 tonight. So I think it actually helps me.
Do you like, that means you're working like, I can't think of.
Well, I know what you're trying to say.
Do you resent it?
No, because I could easily say I'm not going to get on that call tonight.
Okay.
And they'll record the call and but like, I want to be on the call because it's important information. I want to be there and I want to provide, feedback. And so, but if there was something going on that I couldn't be there, it would be okay for me to not be there.
Okay. So I was thinking about that movie, Picture Perfect, with Jennifer Aniston, where it was like the boss wouldn't promote her because she didn't have anything to lose because she wasn't married and didn't have kids. And it was like...
Wait, let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
There was a couple that we used to work with.
Yeah.
You know the story.
I don't, but I think I know who you're talking about.
The woman asked for a raise and her boss said, well, your partner makes plenty of money, so you don't need a raise. We could talk about that offline.
Sorry. Oh my gosh, my mouth was gaping open.
I can't believe you don't remember that.
I've never heard that. That is insane.
They weren't even married. They were just dating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. I have to do it. Wait, hold up. What? Like, that is just it's so mind-boggling to me that we are in our current time of life.
Well, this was maybe 13 years ago. So it wasn't, it's 2024, but
still
pretty modern times. Yep.
I feel that sometimes there are moments where it hurts me professionally. Mm-hmm. And there are some times where it helps me professionally. I definitely can see both ends of it. When I look at it from a professional perspective and hurting me, it's the perception of who I am. That it is what it's hurting, right? We're going to have a dinner and we want you to bring your wives and husbands and that kind of stuff. I've worked in a bunch of environments where that was the thing. But yes, I felt like, even in our time at Oakley, my boss would be like, hey, there's a focus group in Boston tomorrow. I need somebody to go. And I was like, I can go, right?
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's horrible. But it also gave me the opportunity to learn more and get more experience. And so it's this double-edged sword.
Tonight, right? I'm doing it.
Yeah. And I think if you know yourself and you know your boundaries and limits, you get to choose when you cross them to do more or put more in there because you can see whether or not it has a greater good, right?
Yeah. Do
you get asked about it in work setting?
It's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, I think once when I was at Oakley, someone's like, one of my engineers was like, do you just like hate men?
I get that all the time.
And I was like, you're asking if I hate men because I'm not married? But how do you know I don't just like love men so much? I don't want to be with only one for the rest of my life.
I love it.
It was like, okay.
You're like, I got options, buddy.
Yeah, like, what do you mean I hate men? What makes you think I hate men? I don't other than that, which I mean, we used to play around a lot there. So I don't know, there was nothing like
Yeah.
serious, or at least I didn't take it seriously. I don't think it's ever come up. I mean, I'm sure it's come up that like I'm single and I have no kids, but it's never like, are you okay? Or what, what are you gonna do? Yeah, no, it's never.
I
I don't
always
think it's
like,
ever.
there's so many nuances to the way family, friend, work dynamics work, right? And then one of the things that I think has been really eye-opening in my friendship with you is you are very East Coast. Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
very East Coast. That being said, you loved the West Coast lifestyle, right? But you
I
haven't
love the beach.
yeah, you have an East Coast sensibility about you. And so for me, it was a really cool juxtaposition because I'm born and raised West Coast, right? Like I've never lived on the East Coast. And so those dynamics of culture that are just simply within our own country are different, right?
Yep.
So for example, your family being like, do what you want to do. I don't care. What does it matter to me, right?
Yeah.
That was not my experience, right? Or like, you're gonna
I
regret
don't know if
this.
that's equal. I don't know if that's an East Coast thing. I think that might just be a Songbird family thing, but
Fair. Completely fair. But I
I
get a
have
lot
friends. I
of
have friends whose moms are like, "Where are you? You're gonna have kids? What do you? I want to be a grandma." So
you're like, no.
yeah.
When we started this and you were like, oh, it's amazing, right? One of the things we alluded to was the financial component of being single income, no kids.
Yeah.
So obviously that's great.
Yes.
You get to solely decide who, what, when, where, and why you spend your money.
100%. Except for medical shit, but yes, 100%.
For sure. That is such a modern day concept for women.
For sure.
And it is so beautiful. And it is one of the benefits, again, not knocking anybody else's choices, but it is so like when people are like, oh, you just need to take better care of yourself. I'm like, oh, no, you don't understand.
We'll be very.
I take very good care of myself. Like, if I want it, I get it, right? Like, obviously within reasons and within my financial limits and things like that. But when we were at Oakley, we used to do a lot of presentations about women and why they shop and why they buy and how Title IX and other cultural things that have happened in the last 50 years have really contributed to the freedom of women in such major ways. And I would give this example of like, if I want a gold pair of shoes and a black pair of shoes, I'm going to have that. I might have 3 or 4 or 5 gold pairs of shoes because I get to decide that. And it was a discussion on whether or not retailers and brands should put limits on people and make assumptions about them, right? So I walk into a store at my age and instantly assumptions are made about me as a consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yep.
she probably has kids. She probably has a husband. Oh, she's 48. She's probably taking care of ailing parents. So she doesn't have a lot of money. So she's probably going to go to this section of the store and we should only sell her this, right?
Right.
And so there's certain parts of retail that don't try to sell you something more. And we were saying, you don't know my business. Listen to me, right?
Yep.
Do not sell indiscriminately. But listen to what I am saying, and you might get a 2, 3, 4 times bigger sale because you're listening to what I'm saying because I have that money to spend. We, as a whole, women of this generation, I mean, not ours, we're a little bit older, but it works for us too. We make more money than our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, oftentimes our fathers and our grandfathers. And that is such a cultural shift. How do you see that in your life? Like, how does that impact you, what you do, how you make decisions?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think about it like that. I just buy what I want and I go where I want and I do what I want. None of it is like, oh, I'm 47 years old and I'm single without kids and I make more money than my mom made. That's not even part of my conversation.
Mhm.
I do what I want when I want.
Do people ever
And
call you selfish?
nobody ever does. I think I call myself selfish more than most. I think when I tell people, if someone's like, "Oh, I didn't like kids," or and I'm like, "Well, I'm very selfish." People get angry that I'm calling myself selfish.
Mm,
Well, no, it's not selfish. It's not selfish to not have kids. It's selfish to have kids when you shouldn't have them. And yes, I agree with
agreed.
that. But like, I slept on Saturday until 10:30, and I laid in my bed and scrolled through Instagram until 11:30, and then I went out for lunch, and then I went shopping.
Yeah.
And then I got a foot massage. All of that was for me. And
Yeah.
and because I want to do those things, that's what makes me happy. And so, yeah, I'm selfish because I want to do the things that I want to do. And so I call myself selfish more than anyone else. And maybe people call me selfish behind my back. I don't know. I don't care. But
Well,
no
it's
one's ever
also
said
whether,
to me in my face, "You're so selfish."
yeah. And it's also selfish. It's so funny how we put words into categories. Like selfish is automatically assumed to be a
Negative,
negative.
for sure.
And maybe we've been using that incorrectly for a long time.
Well, I think maybe the term that you want to use when it's not negative isn't selfish, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just you're self-focused
Yeah.
or I don't know. I don't know what the right word is, but and call it what you want. I want to do what I want to do.
What do you think is the most ridiculous stereotype about the life that you're living?
You're gonna love this. That I'm a lesbian. So
Every damn day.
no joke. My father, my father,
Yeah.
those who don't know him, the captain, yes. I was on the phone with him this morning because I had a few medical things going on. I wanted to update him on what was going on. And I had an episode a few weeks ago and I was with a friend and with a friend that I hang out with a lot, who's 46 and single and lives in Manhattan and has disposable income. And we hang out a lot. We have a lot in common. We have a lot in common. We have a lot not in common. And so I mentioned her, and my father said to me this morning, "Are you two an item?" And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm not a lesbian." And he's like, "Okay, I'm like, "Not at all." And he's like, "All right, that's fine." And then we changed the subject. But I was like, "This is so perfect for this day because I'm recording with Dawn later." Um, however, I'm guilty of it.
Mm.
So it happened recently, maybe a few months ago, and it stuck with me because I was angry at myself. Kid I went to high school with, someone mentioned him. He lives in Florida. I was like, "Oh, did he ever get married?" And they're like, "No, he's single." And I said, "Is he gay?" So I did, and no, he's not.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his circumstances are, and I don't know if he was married. I did what people do to me,
Yeah.
or
Well,
what my father did to me this morning.
but also implying that if you were LGBTQIA, that you would automatically be single. Because
Well, that's the thing. I was like, well, first of all, I mean, those of you that don't know me, when I lived in California, the majority of my friends were lesbians. So
Yeah.
if I was a lesbian, I would have been a lesbian then.
Yeah.
But also, even if I was a lesbian, I would still not want kids, not want a life partner. I would, right? It doesn't matter, gender, whatever. I don't like, I hang out with my homie and we have a great time and we're like, "See you later. We'll talk tomorrow." Like, I'm going home. And so I think that I don't want to say it's ridiculous, but that's probably the one.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, something came up recently. An older man that I'm friends of friends with. He's it's like relatives and friends and relatives, and we hung out a few weeks ago with a group of people, and we smoked some pot,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was stronger pot than he was used to. And he's in his 70s, and he was just like laughing, and he was talking, and he said something about like women who think they don't need a man. And he was talking to someone else. And then I looked over at him and he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." And I was like, "Well, I'm not offended. I don't ever really get offended. And like, I didn't say I don't need a man. Like, I'm not with someone because I don't need a man. It's not important to me to do that. And I'm not like I hate to say it, feminazi. Like, I hate men and I don't need a man. I'm going to show the world I can do it without a man." Like, so I think that there's a generation that believes that
Yeah.
we are just trying, we're like, screw the patriarchy. We're never gonna, do those things that our moms had to do.
Yeah.
I, I don't, I don't think, and I don't live my life that way.
I probably do. And
Yeah.
not to that degree. Like I don't hate men. I don't none of that, right? I would love a partner. But I do feel that I push against the grain of what was and is expected by previous generations. And in that, if my dad talks to my stepmother in a way that I would never allow someone to talk to me like, I say something about it, right?
Right.
I'm like, you don't talk to people like that, right? And
I
I
do that to my father too.
yeah, like while it is generational, I'm like, no one's gonna talk to me like that. But
I just don't feel like it's patriarchal. I just think my dad can be a dick to men and women, to anyone.
sure,
And so he needs to get called out when he does that.
fair. I think there are some in my experience, but there's also this thing of, I get people don't like their boat being rocked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that. And change is hard. If you grew up believing and learning and a certain thing, and then it's hard to kind of change that. But I get really upset with comments like that because it implies that there is no ownership on them for why I may not like them or why I may not want to be with them, right? Like I'm sure you've heard this.
It
Maybe
goes
not.
back to the cat thing. Like,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Why do women rather spend their time with cats than you?
Exactly. And like I want that to be understood, that if I am going to choose to be with somebody, I'm going to choose somebody that is aligned with my values and that respects me at least as much as I respect myself.
Sure.
Right? And
I've seen that, like, you're not competing with other guys, you're competing with me.
Yes. Yes. And I'm dope. Like,
yes.
And by the way,
I'm do dope shit.
I'm dope and I do dope shit. I'm not for everybody. And
Sure.
that is okay.
Same.
But that doesn't change how dope I am. Like it is not this meter that, oh, these 3 people over here, they don't really like that. So now you suck. That's immature thinking. That's young thinking. It's what we're told we're supposed to believe, right? But it's really not about that. And so when I am looking, what I'm saying to the universe or what I'm saying to the patriarchal country that we live in is that's not enough for me. Because you also raised me to believe I was worth more than that. And so I get stuck in this generational thing where they raise us to be better and then they get mad when we are.
Yes. And I would say in my family, it's less about getting mad. I was raised to be very independent.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things that I would say a lot of women wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't try or wouldn't want to do. And I have these conversations with my father because he asks about my friends, you being one of them. And a lot of my friends are single. And we have these conversations about like, well, why are you girls all single? It's like, well, we were literally just talking about a study that said single childless women are the happiest subgroup of people in the world. And I think that there's nuance there, right? You hear people like, oh, that's not the full story. That's not the full test, blah, 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 blah. Fine. But I'm listening to you argue with this person that you live with. And I'm listening to that one argue with that person that they live with and get frustrated with that. And what do you mean? Why are we single? Like, we're happy.
Right.
There's never a question about to people who are not single. And there's never like well, why are you married?
I started asking that when this was like 10, 15 years ago. People would always say, I don't get it. You're such a sweet, nice, smart girl. Why aren't you married? And I was like, I don't know. Why are you? And the
freaks them out.
Furor that comes back in return. And again, I'm not knocking marriage. If my life works out and that happens, that happens. Where I get stuck in this dialogue is, why is it that there's only one path to happiness? Like, why can't there be different paths for different people that mean different things?
I think it's generational.
Yeah.
I really do. And no one else. I mean, my dad's never like, are you dating anyone? Are you seeing anyone? Like, he knows if there's anyone important, he'll find out about it.
Sure.
No one else in my life is one person. So I have an ex-boyfriend from when I was in my early 20s who I was friends with for years before we were together, and we were friends for years after. And fortunately, he passed away 7 years ago, and I'm still close with his mom. And so we talk a couple times a year. And every time I talk to her, she wants to know if I'm dating someone because she just wants me to be happy.
Yeah.
And I, it's very sweet, but it's bullshit. And one of the last few times I spoke to her, she was telling me that her husband, not my ex's dad, but his stepdad, was very ill, and he's doing this and he's going through this and he's doing that. And he can't leave the house, and she's got to carry him, and she's got to do this. And she's going on and on and on and on and on and on about all the shit that she has to deal with an ailing spouse.
Yeah.
And then in the same breath, she's like, I want you to be with someone. And I was like, really? Because your life sounds so great. And we have that kind of relationship.
Yeah, of
and
course.
She was like, fucking touche, bitch.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not selling the dream to me at all.
Yeah.
And so she's the one who asked. My brother never, my cousins never, like, I don't, and I know that that's different for you.
Yeah.
In my family, it's everybody knows, like, Stacey's going to do what Stacey's going to do.
Yeah.
And if I meet someone in a week who's like this unicorn and I freaking trip over myself because they're so amazing, yeah, I'll see what happens. I'm not like totally shut off to it. I'm not looking for it. I'm not going after it.
As you were saying that, I wondered if you ever, obviously not now, but in the past, when someone would be like, oh, you don't have kids? Do you want kids? Or some version of that question. And you responded however you responded. Did anybody ever say, but you'd be such a good mom?
Maybe. I truly, I could maybe count on my hand how many times someone has asked me, like, if I want kids or if I'm going to have kids.
It's so interesting.
So my brother's married to this awesome girl, Gina. They've been married for a long time, but he had a very, very, very brief marriage before her. And at her wedding, my mother had been gone at his wedding, and my mother had been gone for 5 years. And her first cousin, who I've probably spent combined 2 hours with in my entire life, very sweet woman, lives in Florida. She was asking me what was going on with my life. I was 29 years old, and I was like, oh, I'm single, da, 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 who knows what I'm. And she said something to my mom's best friend at the wedding. I didn't find out about this until later. And she said to her, I'm really worried about Stacey. And my mom's best friend was like, well, why? Like, Stacey is doing exactly what her mother would want her to be doing. She's living her life. She's not settling. And again, I didn't know this, but then later in the night, cousin came up to me and said, you know what? I thought about it and I realized you're living your life just like your mother would want you to. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I found out later what happened. And I was so grateful. I was so grateful for my mom's friend, but it was also like, don't worry about me. I'm good. Yeah. Like, I'm good. And I think that's, when you ask what's the most crazy thing that people assume, like, A, that I'm a lesbian, B, that I hate men, C, that I'm trying to go against the patriarchy, but also that I'm unhappy. And it's like, nah. And again, I was 29 then. It was a long time ago. Also, 3 months later, I packed my bags and moved across the country on a whim.
Yeah. And
so I got to do some really pretty cool shit because I was living my life the way my mother would have wanted me to.
Yeah.
And so
I love that.
I think it affects other people more than it affects me. But like I said, I'm very fortunate. Most people in my life, maybe they have conversations behind my back. I'm sure they do, but no one really gets in on me about it at all.
So interesting.
I'm lucky. I think if they did, I'd be very frustrated with it. Like, I was annoyed with my father this morning because I was like, really, dude? Like, come on. Like, I've had close girlfriends my whole life. This is a woman I've known for 20 years. Like, she was married. She has a grown kid. Like, where is this coming from? But it's what people go, I did it
Yep.
about Tony, right?
Yeah.
I did it. People go to that.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, it's a changing world, right? And what those dynamics look like have changed, and it takes people a while to get used to it. I think while I have grace and space for that, I think the frustrating part for me is just that people believe that that's the only way to find happiness and that you
sure.
won't find happiness without it. And look, would my life be
You're a
richer?
miserable cat. You're a miserable cat lady
Yeah.
without it.
Yeah. And it's like, and I've also had conversations with friends who have kids and a husband who have been like, they would never give up their life. Never. Right. But can still look and say, man, I envy what you have every so often. Right.
Yeah.
And I probably do the same thing. Like I like my life. I love my life, right? I love this freedom that I have and this ability that I have. But that doesn't mean I don't look and go, oh wow, like someone to watch the housewives with and maybe help out with a bill or a chore or, watching your kid do something really good. Like, I mean, I cry anytime I see a kid do anything. So like I'm just like, oh my God. But I've started to also because people will be like, I get you'd be such a good mom, as if that's
Yeah.
the reason I should change my mind. Just because I would be
Right.
good at it. Oh, cool. Then I should do it. Which is not always the answer to everything, right?
I don't think I'd be a good mom.
Well, so
I think I'd be good for in certain instances, but I have very little patience. And I said in the beginning, I don't want to teach you how to do stuff. I don't want to play your games.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's like, nah.
I think for me, I look at it as in some ways breaking generational curses.
Yeah.
And generational trauma and realizing that while I might be good at it, my emotional capacity to do it the way I would want to do it so that my kid doesn't experience maybe some of what I experienced isn't there. And so if I were to have a kid, I don't know that I would be able to. It's kind of like when you're this is a horrible analogy. You're a professional athlete, right? And you go and you get to the highest pinnacle of it. And then they're like, hey, do you want to do this? And you're like, no, I don't want to play half-assed. I want to play at the highest level. And I just knew that for me, that highest level of raising a child, I do not have the capacity for yet in my life. And while I am continually working on that healing process, it has taken me past the age where I can do that effectively and have children. And so I'm at peace with that. And I get my fill. Like I am so bonkers about my nieces and nephews. And if I could, I'd spend every single minute with them, right? Like I love that, but I love that I then get to go home.
Sure.
Like that is great. I just spent a month on a cot at my sister's house with her 4, almost 5-year-old, and I had the best time. But good Lord, I was exhausted. And when I came home, like I had to plan my week. Like I pre-ordered groceries, I pre-scheduled therapy. I knew I was going to get a little dark for a couple days because that was so much stimuli that I'm not used to, right? And I have the privilege of then being able to take that break and take that moment. And when you're a parent, you do not have that privilege. It is literally the hardest job on earth. I do not care what anybody else says. And women that not only do that, but then do that and work at this like high level, intellectually draining job. And then some of those women are also basically raising husbands oftentimes, right? Or men who travel or who also have really big job commitments. And so we know that they're taking on all this extra. And I literally look at those women and I just stare at, like with my sister, I almost, not every night, but I almost teared up every single night I was there purely from being in awe of everything that she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to work with a woman, Jen,
Yep.
at Oakley. And she's still young. We're still young. We're still young. But
Definitely.
20 years ago, right? She's much younger and she was raising 2 kids and a husband. She lived like 2 hours away from work. And she was
And this was when you went to the office 5 days a
and
week.
we went, yes. And she worked extra hours and somehow she was
Travel.
the main responsible person for raising the kids and taking care of things. And it was just like, sometimes I would just go in her office for 15 minutes. I would book a meeting just so she could have a moment with nothing on her calendar.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, I don't know, I'm exhausted and I don't know how you're doing this.
I think that's part of it too. For me, it's not breaking generational curses.
Yeah.
That is so hard. And I'm very much, I don't want to say a risk versus reward. I'm an effort versus reward.
Yeah.
And I know the love of a child is unlike anything you'll ever experience in your life. Cool. The effort is way beyond anything I'd ever want to do.
Which is so fair.
I watch my friends, I watch my sister, I watch my family, I watch my cousins. Like, no, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a lot of appointments this week and I'm like, how am I going to do everything to add in kids with school and doctors and birthday parties and soccer?
Yeah.
It's
also part of the reason that I want to be, I'm not saying I always am, but I want to be like the best aunt ever. Not just to the ones that are blood related to me, but even like the friends that I'm super close with and close with their children, because I want to be an asset to helping them, because I can see, and I can see from the outside how different.
That's why you're a better person than I am.
I mean, look, if I didn't,
well, of course, if anyone needed me, of course, but I am never going to be like, call me first. No, you call me last. I'll do it, but call me last. Like,
so I feel that way about rides to the airport. There's Uber and Lyft.
I don't have a car. I live in New York.
Yeah, like, why are you calling me? Like, there's Ubers and Lyfts and it's not that expensive. Please don't call me for that. But your kid needs a ride to practice. You need someone to watch the kid to go get your hair done. Also, don't ask me to cook. That's for both of our benefits. But I can order, I can run errands, like all of those things, right? Like, I'm super happy to do all of those things. But it's also, it enriches me as well. I get time with the kid. I get things that I like. And so it's not like I'm just doing it to be a good person. I'm getting something from it. And I love to be in the presence of children because I love the wonder and the joy that they are reminding me to keep a hold of. That's what I get from those relationships, is not to take life so seriously and not to, I am an emotional person where the news just brings me to dark places, and social media and kids help bring me out of that, because it's like, hey, the world's still spinning, right?
Yep.
Like, and let's go throw water balloons. Let's go have a lemonade stand. And I'm like, yes, let's do it, right? Like, I am down. I am your girl for lemonade stands. I just want you to know ours made $40 2 weeks ago, which is pretty good for only being out there for an hour.
I will say, I will buy all the lemonade.
I buy all the wrapping paper, the plants, the cookies.
They look like dinner parties and all that. I will buy something great.
Yeah.
I'm not cooking. I'm not baking. I'm not doing any of that. I will give you money for whatever you need.
When Otis was born, I also said, apparently, I was looking at him and I go, oh my gosh, we're going to go on so many adventures together. We're going to travel the world. We're going to get you through college. And my brother goes, everybody heard that, right? Aunt Dee is paying for college and international travel. Like, oh, crap. As we wrap this up, I always like the guests to say whatever the last thing is. And, this was kind of just let's just chat about it. Let's not have an agenda and stuff like
that. We've had similar conversations before.
Yes. If you wish, or you could have a wish granted for people to understand something about the life that you're living as a single income, no kid woman in her 40s, and not because you want them to align with your values or believe whatever, but just so that they could understand and just mind their business. What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it would be a wish because that's such a waste of a wish.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what other people think.
I love it.
I think it would be let people live their lives, let people enjoy their happiness, let people do what they want to do. And it doesn't have to look like what it's always looked like. It doesn't have to look like what you think it should look like. It doesn't have to look like what your life looks like. Just live and let live.
I love it. What a wonderful way to end it. Thank you, my friend. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I always love talking to you. So, and we actually stayed on topic better than I thought we would. So, even better.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank
So,
you.
thank you.
Appreciate being here.